on the impact of COVID-19 and on real estate, re-examinations and recommendations for the future. Organized by NUS Department of Real Estate. My name is Sky Kedingsia. I am the Deputy Head at Department of Real Estate. In June this year, the department, like the rest of the world, faced disruptions. Students who typically undertake internships for credit had difficulties securing internships or had their internships rescinded. And our summer program, an immersive experiential overseas program, was canceled. The department thus conducted a summer module program for the students, and it's entitled Impact of COVID-19 on Real Estate. And this is for our Year 3 students. At the same time, we also organized a series of Nurturing Young Leaders seminars. In this seminar series, we invited our alumni, who are also industry leaders, to share and to speak on the impact of the pandemic on the various sectors in real estate and real estate activities. The hard work put in by our students for the summer program culminated to this public seminar. This public seminar is therefore to showcase our students' hard work. To kick off this event, we have the pleasure of inviting Professor Zheng Tianfu, the head of Department of Real Estate, to deliver his opening remarks. Professor Zheng, please.
Hi. Thanks, King. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends. I'm very pleased to that we actually able to organize this special seminar session on COVID impact-19, as King had mentioned, because of the disruption of COVID-19. At the beginning of the years, we had to actually think creatively, helping our students, especially the Year 3 student who is going for the internship, but the internship was disrupted, to find something interesting for them to enhance their learning experience. So we actually introduced this COVID-19 impacts project, where we actually invite the student to participate and look at some of the experiences and some of the solutions that we can offer for the industry to overcome some of these impact problems. So we also very grateful for the support of the industry. We have created a NUS Real Estate Impact COVID-19 Impact Fund. We have raised about 30 over thousand, trying to help some of the financial needy students during this period, and also to support this project. I would like to thank many people, industry participants and our partners, KH Tans, and also our colleagues, and also donors who have generously donated to this NUS Real Estate COVID-19 Impact Fund, which have in a small way helped some of the students overcome some of this financial difficulty during this period. And also putting together this seminar session, our colleague Xiong and other colleagues who have actually worked very hard, Candy, Ginny, Zainab, and many others who are actually working hard to try to put this together, because this is a summer program, which is the first time we are trying to look at issue and try to allow the student to use this as an interesting learning experience. So today, we actually shortlisted about 5 groups of students to share their findings during this period. After working over the last 4 to 5 months, trying to find solution. So today, we hope this will be the interesting sharing experience, so at least students can actually present their findings, and hopefully some of these solutions will have some impact and help to alleviate some of the impact of COVID-19 project. With that, I think, again, thanks everyone who have actually contributed, and also the students for your hard work. And those who are not shortlisted for the presentation, I also congratulate them for their work that they have put into the project. So without further ado, I think I would just like to welcome you again and enjoy this today's seminar session.
Thank you, Prof. Zheng. This afternoon's program consists of 5 presentations which were selected from 18 group projects. Each group will have a 20-minute presentation, and this will be followed by a 5-minute Q&A. Please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen to post your questions. As there are about more than 200 of you, we apologize in advance if we are not able to answer all your questions. The first group presentation is entitled New Generation Quick Build Dorms. And the group members are Barnabas Teong Yang, Sam Tan Yi, and Xiong Guoxin. Barnabas and Guoxin will be presenting this presentation. Let me read out the project synopsis. Dormitory outbreaks have crippled the construction industry in Singapore as the virus spreads like wildfire. How can dormitories be restructured to prevent future pandemics? Our concept of new generation quick-built dormitories suggests quick-built dormitory complexes which are built to demand and sectorized according to project sites that workers are working in. With carefully planned layouts to allow for contingencies, they also integrate the light use of simple technologies for contact tracing. Our new structure will present a future outbreak of this scale and avoid any lockdowns in the event of infectious outbreaks. May I invite Barnabas and Guoxin, please?
Thank you, Prof. Sky. Hello to everyone at home. This is my group mate, Guoxin, and I'm Barnabas. We also have a third group member, Sam, who's resting from all the hard work we've put him through. Before we start, I want to thank Professor Sing Tian Fu for supervising our project as well. In the past few months, we've seen how COVID-19 has really affected our economy. And one particularly hard-hit industry was construction because of the number of massive infection clusters that formed inside the dormitories. And at the end of this 15 to 20 minutes, we hope to have convinced you of our new generation quick-built dormitory model, which is a model by which we envision foreign worker dormitories to function moving forward and to stay functioning in the event of a future pandemic. We also cover the issue of funding, and since price always matters, we will talk about financial feasibility very briefly. So, very briefly, if we could have the slides. Very briefly, this is the flow of our presentation. Now, there are quite a diverse range of foreign worker dormitories. So before we begin, it'll be wise for us to narrow down the scope a little. Our presentation will be focusing on drawing a comparison between our model and purpose-built dormitories, or PBDs in short. And there are three reasons for this. The first reason being that PBDs represent the dominant form of foreign worker dormitories in Singapore. They house about 200,000 of the 323,000 population in dormitories. Secondly, some of these PBDs house anywhere between 1,500 to as many as 25,000 foreign workers, making them most susceptible to infectious cluster formation. And the third reason is that PBDs fall under the Foreign Employee Dormitories Act 2015, which is FIDA 2015 for short, which puts them under more stringent regulatory criteria, such as having the facilities that you see in the slides. So what we're doing here is essentially we're taking the best in class, and then we are comparing our model to this, and then we are saying that if our model is better at an acceptable cost, then we should proceed with our model. So now that we've narrowed down the scope, let's look at how COVID-19 has affected dormitories and the construction industry. On 10 June, dormitory infections accounted for 94% of COVID-19 infections in Singapore. And we know that since then, the dormitory outbreaks continued for quite some time, while community cases decreased at a quicker rate. So we would say that most likely the rate is probably even higher now. On 14 August, 1 in 6 workers living in dormitories had contracted COVID-19 already. Now, the construction industry has been very much halted. By 17 June, only 17,000 of 323,000 workers were cleared to resume work. That's only about 5% of the dormitory population. Because of how badly it's been disrupted, the government has had to allocate 1.36 billion to help the industry resume. On top of that, another 920 million was allocated with a fund, in a fund that is shared with the marine and shipyard sector. So long story short, there's been significant disruption and uncertainty. As our manpower minister has rightfully pointed out, this is because the construction sector faces far more stringent rules because the virus spreads very easily at work sites. So on the slides, you see two quotations from companies which were disrupted by COVID-19. The first is by Korea Holdings, where 20% of their workforce actually had to go back into quarantine. The other is by Low and Low Construction, where they were going to end their stay-home period and suddenly it was extended. So it can be very disruptive to the construction industry. And now that we've seen how the pandemic has affected the industry, let's look at the government measures to adapt dormitories to mitigate future recurrences. And let's also discuss the shortfalls of these measures. If you turn your attention with me to this slide here, basically it's a table that shows the government's tweak to current regulations, and you will see that it focuses mostly on creating more space per worker. Although they've also slightly reduced the size of clusters in rooms from 16 to 10, but 10 people per room, I think you agree with me, that's still quite sizable. And what are the limitations of these regulations? Firstly, enforcement will remain an issue. Even prior to COVID-19, half of PBDs were breaching the already more lax regulations, even though the enforcement back then was quite intensive. Physical distancing also remains inadequate, with studies showing that COVID-19 can spread up to 4 meters away and linger for up to 14 minutes. So the last thing is that cross-contamination will remain an issue at common spaces within the dormitory complex, at project work sites where workers work together, and at public spaces. So just to illustrate, on the slide you see a gif of me pouring Coke into a cup of coffee. And I think beyond agreeing on the fact that that's a disgusting drink, we can also agree that if I were to ask you to split the Coke particles from the coffee particles after I've poured it into a single cup, you would consider that ridiculous, and you probably need a chemistry expert or an intense process of chemistry to get it done. So similarly, healthy people and sick people don't go well together. Once they have mixed together in an enclosed room, like the cup that you see, they become difficult to segregate. And that's actually what we've seen in the past few months in the dormitories with the exhaustive and intense effort that has been spent on testing. So likewise, the government's new regulations generally offer a bigger cup, and it does help a little, but the fundamental problem is the same. COVID-19 particles can travel up to 4 meters within that cup. So if I had COVID-19, for example, and I sneezed here, then the people in the front 2 rows might probably get infected, and Guoxin, who's seated 1.2 meters away from me, he's probably a goner. So instead of only creating a bigger cup, we are going to structure dormitories and project sites in a way that lets us swiftly divide this big cup into smaller cups during an emergency. Our model will build quick-built dormitory complexes that are divided into sectors. For example, if there are 4 projects, as you see on the slide here, then these 4 projects workers will be divided into 4 corresponding sectors within our QBD complex. And these 4 sectors will each have their own shared gym and shared canteen to prevent intermingling between the different sectors. Separately, we will also structure rooms in a way that allows for a greater level of segregation in an emergency, and Guoxin will explain about that in a while. That said, for our plan to work, we do need to change the industry's operating model. Currently, the government tenders out land to operators who build the dormitories and lease it out to employers, and we propose that the government follow through with their plans to do a build-own-lease model. So this will allow them to ensure that dormitories are built according to specifications. It facilitates cost sharing between the government and operators. It gives the opportunity for lowering costs with economies of scale. And most importantly, it allows the government to take control in the event of an emergency like a future pandemic. And before we continue, we do have a short video that highlights the key details of our model, after which Guoxin will dive into the details with us. So would it be possible to play the video now? Thank you.
Okay, we hope that the video has briefly showcased our project, and now I will dive into the details. So just to recap, As we saw the huge impact of COVID-19 on dormitories, one of the main objectives for this project is to introduce a new dormitory model that will be future-ready in such pandemics. Hence, we have came up with a hypothetical design that comes with new creative features. So to begin, here's a list of the primary features for our proposed design. Our model can have a maximum 36 blocks that could house up to 5,760 workers, and our estimated construction period will be 6 months. Now, let's take a look at our 4-sector complex design. As you can see in the layout on the right, each complex will consist of 4 sectors with shared facilities such as supermarket, car park, retail, and barber shops. And within each sector, there will be a maximum of 9 dormitory blocks, 1 canteen, and a small gym. As our idea is to build to demand, hence the number of blocks can actually vary depending on the requirements or the site restrictions. Here is a cross-section view of one block, and as you can see, it has 4 levels and can house up to 160 workers, 40 workers per level. Louver windows will also be installed on the lamps of the window for ventilation. Moving on is our floor plan. As you can see, each floor plan is made out of 4 bedrooms, 2 corridors, and 4 staircases at the end of each side of the corridors. And abiding to the new regulations, each bedroom will only have 10 single beds, with 1 meter spacing apart between them, giving a 6 square meter living space per resident. Furthermore, every 5 workers will be sharing 1 common toilet, bathroom, laundry, simple kitchen, and a dining table. I'll explain why we are having such an orientation in a short while. Now, let me introduce our 4 tiers of segregation, which is in the heart of our design methodology. On the first tier, which is the room tier, we will install a 17-meter foldable plastic sheet in the center of each room, and on normal days, it will just be folded up like how a curtain does. And in the event of any pandemic, the plastic sheet will be able to extend breadth-wise that divides the room into 2 individual sections for more efficient microcluster management. And on the second tier, which is the floor tier, during a pandemic situation, basically each room is only accessible to the staircase that's nearer to them. This will further minimize the cross-interactions between the 2 rooms on the same level. Next is our third tier. This actually builds on from the second tier, where each dormitory block will be segmented into 4 mini blocks, as you can see over here. We'll also be installing a LED button on each level to implement a traffic light system to control their access to staircase and further reduce the cross interactions between different levels. And for our last tier, which is the complex white, our 4-sector arrangement actually allows the operators to implement quarantine zones where 1 sector may be quarantined while the other sectors could still function normally. And this will reduce the impact on construction progress. On top of our 4-tier segregation method, we will also introduce a monitoring system which utilizes the RFID that stands for Radio Frequency Identification Technology. Apart from its common features that it usually has, we have integrated a few more targeting features, such as generating data for the operators to implement population control at specific areas, traceable movement records, time sessions for the workers, and also provide data to study workers' living pattern so that the operators can actually implement more targeted time schedule. Now, I'll bring you guys through our preliminary financial assessment. Firstly, our total development cost is derived from the estimated land cost and construction cost. So for our land valuation, we actually use the following 2 methods, namely the lease valuation and the tender price valuation. With the 3 comparables we identified as shown, we finally reached at a land price of around 1.5 thousand per square meter. Next, to arrive at our total development cost, we firstly estimated the construction cost based on Arcadis data, while making the standard miscellaneous cost assumptions and subsequent calculations. As you can see from this summarized table, we arrived at our estimated total development cost of around $140 million. As mentioned by Barnabas earlier, given that this is a government built on lease model, One of the main benefits is that the government will have the flexibility to lower the cost for the end users through controlling the lease price they're offering to the operators. Thus, in these direct cash flow calculations, we assume that the government will be receiving a $0 NPV and an expected rate of return of 1.4%, which is the average inflation rate. Using the lowest lease price possible, we did another DCF for the operators to calculate their profitability and how we arrive at this internal rate of return of 26.18% and after-tax IRR of 19.58%. Given that the construction risk has been taken away from the operators, a 19.58% ATR is relatively high for a stable government-backed project, suggesting that this proposed model may just be financially feasible. With the model being a new initiative, we made multiple assumptions. Thus, we carry out sensitivity analysis on some of the assumptions that we think are most uncertain. One, which of the most important ones, will be the operating cost. At this point in time, it is difficult to predict the increase in cost with these stricter measures being imposed on the operators. With this sensitivity table, we are able to select the lowest possible fees per bed at $433 to ensure that the operators are not suffering a loss even if the operating cost increases up to $85 per bed, which is actually a 50% increase from the current cost. So based off this study, we would say that our model is relatively workable, given that when the government announced the new regulations, initial estimates from operators were that their charges per bed would go up roughly to 2 times, whereas a $433 per bed fee would be roughly 1.5 times that of the current fees. This is a good thing since we don't want construction costs to inflate too extremely from the new regulations. Okay, now Barnabas will do a short conclusion on our project.
All right, thank you, Guoxin. Thank you for all your attention. I hope that in this brief 15 minutes tackling such a ginormous issue that has challenged Singapore in the past few months, we've been able to demonstrate the plausibility of this model. As far as a preliminary study goes, I believe we have demonstrated that this is a viable push towards a pandemic-proof future for dormitories. Now that said, even if we would really like to believe our model is perfect, we will also be the first to admit that it is not without concerns. And so maybe now we can have go to the Q&A session and look into some of these concerns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Barnabas and Guoxin. We encourage you to post your questions on the Q&A box, and we will try to answer them over here. So let me start off with the first question. The first question is, how does a central supermarket reduce cross-infections when everyone from all the sectoral dorms shop at the same place?
I'll try to answer this question. So why do we have a central supermarket instead of separate supermarket? One basically is to reduce the cost. And to reduce the cross interaction, as I mentioned, that we'll be using RFID technology that controls their access to the supermarket. So we actually have a time sessions for them for each block and each level and each sector. When they can access to the supermarket. So try to minimize the cross interaction in this way.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
The next question is, how quickly could such a model be executed?
I can take this question. So basically, as you saw in the model just now, what it entails is basically the plastic sheet in the center of the room, which can be activated really quickly. And then we also have the different floor levels being segregated in terms of making sure that there's no cross-room interaction. And that one also, I think erecting a simple barrier between the two rooms is also something that is relatively straightforward. As for the LED traffic light system for the stairwell that we mentioned, which is to prevent inter-level mingling, for that one, I think we will be implementing it from the start so that if a pandemic ever happens, we can activate it straight away. As for cross-sector segregation, I think it's also very possible to immediately, maybe in a matter of a day or two, erect barriers in between the different sectors as well. You see that in the, like, for example, F1 or National Day when they set up barriers along the road. Yeah.
So would you be able to give a timeline?
Okay, so I would say in a matter of days, maybe 2 or 3 days, I think it's wholly possible. Yeah.
So you are able to modify existing dorms as well?
Okay, so for this area, as we mentioned earlier, we do have to change the industry operating structure. So existing dorms will probably have to be changed, and even under the current government regulations, they are going to be changed as well.
Remodel.
Yeah.
Okay. The next question I have is there a reason why the group planned for the model to be only 4 levels and not more?
Okay, yeah, so for this, actually, as we mentioned, the projects, the complexes will have to be built according to the project demand. And so that also means that we have to build it fast. And if there's too much delay in building it, then that could hold up the construction projects that they are tagged to. And in order to prevent that from happening, we need to have the complexes built up to 4 levels only, instead of building it to a higher, denser, built-up area. At the same time, 4 levels is an ideal height that we can build to without creating underutilization of the land area, and thereby increasing the cost.
Okay, another question I have is, I have noticed that your proposed car park space is relatively large. Why does a dormitory require such a large space for car park?
Okay, I'll take that question. Yes, actually our car park are separated into 2, so there will be 2 exits on each side, on each end of the dormitory design, but that will be subject to the land restriction as well. So why we are having such a huge space? Primarily because that it can serve as another quarantine area for during such pandemics, and yeah, that's actually the primary objective.
Okay. The next question I have, it's an economic question, actually. It's about cost. So basically the question is, what would be the percentage increase or decrease? So you feel free to say what the direction of the change is. With your new model in terms of construction cost, construction time, and GFA from the existing model, what we have now. Do you happen to know?
Okay, so I believe current in the foreign worker dormitory industry, it depends on which dormitory you're looking at, but let's say Punggol's S11, I believe their construction timeline was roughly 6 months, and I think our timeline will roughly be commensurate, or maybe a few months longer. As for GFA built-up area, we actually referenced the current industry examples heavily, and we believe our built-up area is either commensurate or more efficient than present industry models as well. Yes.
Okay, and I have a last question here, I think, and basically it's an easy question. What is the occupancy assumption you made in your model?
Okay, I cannot recall off the top of my head, but I believe that it was roughly 83% was our occupancy rate. If I remember correctly, we took current occupancy rates on average, and we used that as an adjustment. Yeah, so we did do sensitivity analysis on this to make sure that we can adjust for different factors and still maintain profitability as well. Yeah, but considering that our model will be built according to demand, we predict that we will be able to maintain a relatively stable occupancy rate in general. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. That's all the questions I have for you. Thank you, Guoxin and Barnabas. Very interesting project, very contemporary, and answers a lot of questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let us move on to the next group. And while we wait for the next group to be situated, let me read the synopsis that the group has provided. The title for the next presentation is Spacelink, Unlocking Sharable Workspaces in Neighbourhoods. And the group members are Ang Ziling and Richard Lim Wai Long. Let me read out the group project synopsis. Based on a survey of 73 respondents and secondary research conducted by the team, there is an identified demand for workspaces outside of homes. Therefore, the team proposes the experimental ideas of an Airbnb for workspaces platform called Spacelink, and the creation of 3 possible spaces in neighborhood neighbors areas that can be listed on the platform. The Spacelink platform will be mutually beneficial to landlords, retail merchants, and users alike by allowing listing and booking of workspaces, payments, and targeted advertising on a one-stop platform. The proposed 3 spaces are starting points in the neighborhood in which working spaces can potentially be provided. Zheng and Richard will be your presenters for today.
So good afternoon. Thank you for attending this public seminar. So we got something interesting to share today, and it will be our experimental idea of an Airbnb for workspaces platform and the creation of 3 possible spaces in neighborhood areas that can be listed on it. Hence, our topic is known as Spacelink, unlocking shareable workspaces in the neighborhoods. Next. Before we begin, let me start by introducing our group member. So it will be me, Zheng, and Richard. Next. This will be the flow of the presentation. Firstly, we will give a project overview and it will be followed by a video. After that, we will present the key insights we have gotten from the research. Let's start with the project overview. As you know, the circuit breaker measure as a result of COVID-19 forced many non-essential businesses to work from home. In this period, companies saw productivity level either remaining the same or even increasing. A lot of employees also became more enthusiastic about the idea of working from home. Next. However, there are many issues that comes about from working from home. Based on a survey we conducted, one common issue faced by 75% of the respondents was that there was a lack of distinction between home and work life, while 50% of the respondents also replied that there were too many distractions at home. Another 60% of respondents also indicated a lack of physical interaction with colleagues as one of the obstacles. Hence, from the survey's result, the team has decided to focus on these 3 issues. Firstly, a lack of distinction between home and work life. Secondly, the presence of too many distractions at home. And lastly, the lack of physical interactions between colleagues. Next. So, from these main issues, it became clear that people want a place near their home to do focused work or to have impromptu meetings with colleagues. Next. Before we even provide the solution, we must ensure there is demand for neighborhood workspaces. In 2020, COVID-19 happened. Hence, it accelerated URA CBD incentive scheme to decentralize workplace away from CBD and into the neighborhood. Resultantly, flex office spaces in neighborhood areas will be predicted to increase in the future to cater to this new demand. Following this line of thinking, we gauge the suitability of different working spaces commonly found in neighborhood areas to be used for work. Of the 7 types of spaces listed in our survey, the top 3 choices selected by respondents were regional center offices as the first choice, followed by regional public libraries and neighborhood F&B spaces time for the second choice, and lastly, community center spaces. These survey results conclude that there is indeed demand for workspaces in the neighborhood areas. Next. However, we found out that majority of the co-working spaces are congregated around the CBD, with the exception of Dot Co-working Space, which is the only one in Woodlands. Hence, with the identified demand, it therefore presents a gap in the market for the creation of neighborhood co-working spaces and also an easy way to book these spaces as well.
Okay, so with these issues identified and gap in the market for working spaces in neighborhoods, we propose 4 solutions. The first one is a unified online platform to book neighborhood workspaces that we call Spacelink. The other 3 are cafes, community centers, and also regional centers and libraries, which we propose the creation of shared working spaces that can be potentially listed on Spacelink. First, let's talk about Spacelink. What is Spacelink? In one sentence, Spacelink is a one-stop platform to book workspaces conveniently. Spacelink is a platform business where it links up the suppliers, who are landlords of different spaces, with the consumers, who are the users who want to book the spaces to do work. The main intention of the Spacelink platform is to be the ideal platform where anybody can discover and book new workspaces conveniently from the palm of their hands. In the long term, the platform can incorporate the Matterport technology so that customers can get a sense of the space that they are going to book without having to physically go down to the space. But what about the business model of Spacelink? How can it be sustainable? Well, we can allow companies to buy digital credits for employees to book the spaces, and we can let them buy it in bulk at cheaper rates to again encourage the employees to really use it and book the spaces. Another thing we can do is we can let retail merchants near the workspaces to put up exclusive promotions on our platform, so that when people book the space, they see that, oh, there's a lunch promotion just next door at the mall, and there's also other promotions. And since it's so close by and it's exclusive, it increases the chance that people will stop by to buy from the shop before going home. Now let's talk about the other three spaces: neighborhood cafes, community centers, and regional center libraries and offices. These are the spaces which we propose the creation of working spaces that can be listed on the Spacelink platform. A question you might have is, why would the cafes allow people to use that space? And why would people want to use their own money to book the space? Well, they don't. But what would be good for both groups is paying for food. That's why we have the space plus food bundle. So while you eat the food, you just happen to sit there and do work for a certain amount of time, guaranteed a seat. So that's great for both sides. The cafe gets revenue, and the customers get a place to work and eat. For the CCs, regional centers, and libraries, one issue they might have is they might be worried that there's no demand. Well, in this case, what they can do is use an unlock upon demand scheme, which is borrowed from the GLS land sales, where the spaces are only converted to shared working spaces only when there are people indicating that they want it. So this way, it helps to save resources. Now let's watch a short intro clip about what our Spacelink platform and the spaces are about. Okay, hope you liked the video. We put a lot of effort into that video, about 10 minutes of our time. So while working on this project, we have had some key insights, and now we'd like to share them with you. So while finding out the obstacles that people have while working from home, this was one of the more unusual responses that we got. This respondent said, "I would like to keep work away from home so that I can have a stable state of mind whenever I'm home." Now notice the words that he or she used, stable state of mind. It's one thing to read about the mental health aspect of work from home when doing research for schoolwork, but it's another thing when you actually hear from the people facing these issues. And this response shows that for some people, probably with a very stressful job, their home is like their sanctuary where they go back and they don't have to think about work. So for these people, they ideally prefer to have two spaces, one for work and one for rest. So if, for example, if I feel like I'm more productive outside of offices and I get to choose not to go in today, it would be great if there was somewhere near my home where I can go to do focused work. Another thing we realized was that there is indeed demand for neighborhood working spaces. This picture on your left is from a free shared workspace in Sengkang CC called Workspace at Sengkang CC. Not sure if some of you have heard of it. It's an initiative by Mr. Teo, and it has been there since 2017. And this snapshot on the right is from Mr. Teo's Facebook page, where one person asked, will this concept be rolled out to other CCs? And Mr. Teo replied that he's not very sure, but some people have come to take a look at the concept to see if it actually will be implemented in their own CCs. And this shows that there is already demand for neighborhood working spaces even before the pandemic made work from home the norm. Another clue we got was this work booth on the left. This was a picture taken recently at the atrium of Causeway Point in Woodlands. And I personally feel that this is quite a weird place to put work booths because it's right in the middle of an entirely empty atrium, not like the one that you see, the picture you see on your right. So the work booths are the only thing there, which honestly sticks out like quite a sore thumb. But it actually shows that there is still demand for neighborhood working spaces. We also realized that for all the co-working spaces in Singapore, not only are they all congregated around the CBD, there is also no unified way to book them. These are just some examples of the different operators' websites to book the spaces if you want them. So there is no unified way to book spaces in neighborhood areas in Singapore. Which is why our Spacelink platform that we propose allows people to do just that, to book neighborhood spaces conveniently from the palm of their hands. The last thing we learned is that the future workforce, which are the young people today, most of them, about 88% based on our research, want to have the choice to work from home. Or more specific, they want to work 3 days, followed by 2, 5 and 4 days from home. Only 7.5% out of all that we've interviewed say they don't want to work from home at all. And this shows that people don't want to completely get rid of office life, because that's where you get to interact with all your colleagues, but more that they want the flexibility to be able to choose where they can do the most productive work. And perhaps our young people in the audience today can help to verify if this is true. So our verdict is that from a talent attraction and retention standpoint, it will be disadvantageous for companies not to incorporate at least some flexibility to work from home. So thank you very much for your attention, and now we'll gladly take questions from the floor. Or you can contact us at this email if you want to make an investment.
Yes, that's great, giving everybody your email address. Because it's likely that we'll have a scenario where we have more questions than we have time for us to answer the questions. But keep your questions coming, and if we do not have time to answer them here, we will post them on our website, where the students will actually answer your questions. Okay, so I do have questions for you. And this first question is, as more people work from home, do you see a decrease in the demand for office space? And what would the implications for land be?
Actually,
Implications for landlord and F&B.
oh, implications for landlord and F&B.
Yes.
Okay, maybe I'll start by answering what possible implications it might have for spaces in the CBD areas.
Yeah.
I actually just read an article yesterday. I'm not sure if it's by Prof. Sing Tian Fu or who else. Yeah, it says that there's a predicted decrease in rental demand and prices in CBD areas, and that's one of the issues faced by landlords. And I think it's one of the predictions. Not sure if it's materialized, but for this past 3 quarters, there has been also a decrease in price. So as companies start to look whether or not work from home is possible for the longer term, they're not actually sure that they want to commit to these spaces. So they are signing, even those tenants with leases expiring, they're signing shorter term leases now. So that's the impact on the CBD offices. But for neighborhood offices, what we predicted is that there will be probably a rise in demand for neighborhood spaces. So it would be great if more people work from home and they want different kinds of spaces, then there can be more flex spaces in neighborhoods. Yeah. So if they have more flex spaces, then they can list on our Spacelink platform.
Right, so flexibility is like the key word here, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, based on your findings, this is the next question. It appears that decentralization of workspace will accelerate. Is that your findings, or is it something you assume?
I'll answer that question first. So for that one, it's our finding, because what happened is that this under the URA incentive scheme, where they want to decentralize the workplace from the CBD into the neighborhood area. So if the government is also promoting this kind of ideology, I believe that in the next few years, it should show that the flex spaces in neighborhood areas should increase as well. And also based on COVID-19 current situation, and in the future, it seems that many people are actually looking to work from home or to have more flexibility in their working culture as well. So I believe that by having neighborhood spaces, it can actually greatly benefit companies and also those who are entrepreneurs and freelancers, because now they got a platform to actually lease a space at an hourly basis instead of monthly basis. Yeah, so for that.
Okay. The next question is, what do you see as the competitive edge of Spacelink compared to, co-working operators like WeWork?
Okay. Co-working operators, how they operate now is that there are a lot of different operators, but the more known ones are WeWork or Just Co or some others. How they work is that you have to sign up a membership with them, and in places, in cities where they have a very big presence, it will be an advantage because you can just go to any offices that they own. But in Singapore, a lot of spaces, as we showed just now, was congregated in the CBD areas. And in neighborhood areas, not so much. So maybe next time, something that we predict would be that there will be more of these kind of spaces in neighborhood areas. And if there was one unified platform that you can go to book these spaces, it would be great. One example would be the work booth that we showed just now also. I believe you have to sign up for something, give them your contact detail or something to be able to sign up for an account to use the space. So if that space could be listed on our platform to be browsed, and if you find out that that's a space that you need, then you can just book it there and just go there without any hassle. So it's really about the removal of hassle. Yeah.
Okay. Next question I have here is, for the cafe model, is there a time limit? And if there isn't a time limit, whoever asked this question say it's not much different from a walk-in customer to a cafe or a coffee shop.
Okay, actually, this was something that we thought about as well. We thought about if they, the cafe's owners probably don't want them to hog the spaces as well, right?
During peak hours. Right?
Yeah, correct. So how we're going to pitch this to cafe owners is that we say, we're going to ask the customers who book the spaces, we're going to ask them to do some free advertising on Instagram, whereby if you take a picture of this and you tag the cafes, you get a free cake or free something. So that's free advertising for the cafes. And so we're going to pitch these intangible benefits to them, yeah.
Okay.
So basically, the intangible benefits that is said by Richard is something similar to the secret lab marketing technique in Instagram as well.
Ah,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's interesting.
And also for the cafe owners part, actually what we suggested also was to have a demarcated spaces just for people who want to work there. So from what I know, what I have researched, there's currently one cafe in Singapore that is doing this, and it's Botanic Cafe. So what happened, they have a demarcated working space just for anybody who wants to come and work. So they actually offer some kind of some benefits as well, such as free charging pot, free Wi-Fi for them to actually attract all these customers to come. So I believe it's a win-win benefit for cafe owners and for the customers, because currently there will be some F&B businesses that are not doing so well. So actually, this can be a way for them to market out their cafe spaces as well and get them to come and try the food.
Yeah, okay, so there you go. You answer another question on the implication of F&B. Right, so the last question I have here is, do you actually have statistics on the take-up of these booth-like workspaces in CCs and malls? Do you happen to recall the statistics on the take-up rate?
Actually, this was something that I observed in the atrium of Causeway Point, but I don't have the exact statistics for that. But when I went, there was about 5 in the atrium, and there was only 1 booth that was being used. And yeah, actually, if you can go down to Causeway Point and take a look, this space is actually quite weird because the whole atrium is completely empty. There's nothing there, and just the booths. Yeah. So you can see them, and it's not completely opaque that you cannot see inside. You can see their legs there.
Okay.
So I personally think it's pretty awkward.
Do you remember the date and time you were there?
It was a weekend.
Weekend.
So.
Afternoon.
Around the afternoon,
okay.
Yeah.
So for the CC-wise, the CC-wise only workspace that Sengkang is doing it, so we do not have a statistic for it. But for the regional library-wise, is also an initiative by the URA. It's called SWC. So they have pods in the libraries, regional libraries in Tampines, if I remember correctly. And if I remember the take-up rate from the back of my head, it was around 83 to 87%.
That's pretty high. Wow.
So that's why we say there's a demand for workspaces in the neighborhood and regional areas.
I see. Okay. Do we still have time for questions? We do. Okay. Sorry, there's another question. And do you foresee an oversupply of co-working spaces, given that WFH now includes work from hotels? Oversupply, do you think there would be?
Actually, from what I know, maybe a few years back, the co-working operators have been talking about trying to decentralize into neighborhood areas, but so far we haven't seen that much. And as of oversupply, I don't really know if there will be an oversupply, and I cannot make any predictions because I don't know as much as all of you. But
nobody can make predictions.
Nobody can make predictions. From what we've seen is that a lot of spaces like the KTVs, the hotels, and all of them are jumping on board to offer working spaces. And to us, what this shows is that there is demand for these kind of spaces. That's why they are thinking about opening up spaces to use.
Okay, so I add on to it. So what he said about the KTV was actually the news was just last week. So Teong is actually thinking of converting their space into a co-working or co-study space for working people and students. And what you say, is there might be an oversupply of spaces due to the work from hotels, right? Because work from hotels, most of the hotels are actually in the CBD or the town area, right? So right now we are thinking of having spaces in the neighborhood areas to target the might be future demand and future supply. So I feel that this will not be a problem as well, because let's say you say there's an oversupply of co-working space. I'm pretty sure that the co-working spaces company like Just Co and WeWork has also do their own market analysis, and they're still opening up more co-working spaces, like the current one at Center Point. They just opened up 2-3 weeks back only. So I feel like many companies nowadays are actually also looking to split up their teams and put some of them in co-working space. I cannot remember, one of the companies doing it recently, but I can't remember which company. Yeah.
Yeah, neither can I.
We read about it. Yeah.
Okay. I think we're almost done, but I think we have one more question that can be squeezed in. Let me expand this because I can't really see. Wow. It's a very, very long question. I hope I can finish reading it. Socialization and working close to peers of the same sector are what makes CBD attractive. Do you think it will be ideal to divert workspace to neighborhoods, which may make Singapore's CBD less appealing and competitive than other cities? Is that what do you think? What do you think? I guess the question really is about what do you think about CBD? And also, would this then make CBD less appealing?
I don't feel like it will make the CBD less appealing, because the CBD still has its own charm. And from I guess some of us know that the tech companies like Tencent or Alibaba or Amazon, they are buying up spaces in the CBD where the other companies are vacating. So I think it still has its charm, and it still appeals to some group of people. But for those companies that are relooking at their operations, where some of the operations you can move to neighborhood areas, and that would be good for them. But for the co-working spaces, there's also, they have their own charm as well. So while you work there, you get to interact with different kind of people where you wouldn't have interacted with them before. So that can possibly fuel some creativity and innovation, we hope. Given that Singaporeans are pretty introverted.
Yeah.
Also, under the URA latest incentive scheme, they are trying to liven up the entire CBD area by asking the landlord around the area to conduct placemaking activities and stuff like that. So I believe that even if companies have to move out, right, CBD will not become very down, because after all the sites are there. Like you have like MBS, you have Apple Store there. People will still go there to relax, and also to shop and to eat, like the Clarke Quay and downtown area. So yeah, I think it will not affect much actually.
That's part of human nature, where we want to meet people, we want to be together. That won't change with the pandemic.
We're not suggesting the complete decentralization or the changing of a new total CBD. We're just suggesting that the CBD can play a new role, which is for the central offices or meeting spaces where people still want to come together. That can be the space for them. Yeah, but if they want to do other kind of more focused work where I need to be alone, or I want to interact with other people, I can go to neighborhood co-working spaces.
Yeah, and office hours are no longer 9 to 5, right? It's kind of around the clock also. So that part would probably change in terms of office hours, but CBDs are going to be appealing. Okay, so we will move on to the next group, and thank you so much. Thank you so much, Richard and Zheng. It's really interesting to hear what you have to say in your presentation, your project. Thank you. Okay, so as we wait for the next group, let me read to you the synopsis. The third group is impact of COVID-19 on SGX-listed industrial REITs. And the team members are Yanni, Tiffany, Kweok and Chelsey Fang. The project synopsis is, our project aims to simplify the investment decision-making process of industrial REITs during COVID-19. We analyzed the financial data of SGX-listed industrial REITs in the first 2 quarters of 2020 and derived many interesting insights that we believe are valuable to many. We have hence made our research accessible to the public, and hopefully it guides you in making your next investment. Your presenters for this project will be Tiffany, Lim, and Chelsey. So, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Sky. Good afternoon, honored guests, professors, seniors, and fellow classmates. I am Tiffany, and today I will be my team and I, which consists of Chelsey and Joelle, will be presenting on the impact of COVID-19 on SGX-listed industrial REITs. Could we have the slides, please? Thank you. Okay, so in a time such as now, industrial properties are the most relevant as they cream off spillover effects from booming and tech-driven industries like e-commerce, logistics, and data centers, which house cloud and computer systems that are essential for many industries and sectors. This was the main reason we sought to delve deeper into industrial REITs as opposed to other real estate sectors to see if they still perform as well in the face of an unprecedented crisis. The key agenda of our presentation is to share the findings and insights of our research, which will hopefully guide you in the assessment of your next investment. We will take you through our research methodology, data we have collected, and the analysis we ran to come up with interesting insights and conclusions. So firstly, our methodology. You might be wondering, how did we assess the impact of COVID-19 on the REITs that we've selected? So we based our impact scores on 4 sub-factors, which are economic, international travel, social, and public health. The higher the COVID-19 impact score, it means the higher the REIT or country was hit. Giving an example, under the umbrella of economic factors, we looked at GDP changes during the first 2 quarters of 2020. A country that recorded a larger fall in GDP will record a higher COVID-19 impact score. So from these 4 factors, we computed scores for each country, and in turn, REITs would take the score of countries that they have properties in. For REITs with properties in multiple countries, we used a weighted score based on the asset values of the properties that they have in each country. As for the way we assessed the performance of the REITs, we looked at 7 key financial indicators, and for the benefit of those who may not be too familiar with these terms, I will briefly explain them. So distribution per unit is the dividends that an investor will receive from purchasing a share unit of a REIT. Market share price is the price you will pay for purchasing the share of SGX. Price to book ratio tells you the ratio between the market value to the asset value. Net property income is the rental income that a REIT will receive from its properties, subtracting costs, debts, and management fees. Net asset value is the total asset value of the REIT minus its liabilities divided by its total outstanding shares. Gearing ratio refers to the percentage of debt a REIT has in comparison to its equity. And lastly, weighted average lease expiry, also known as WALE, refers to the average lease length of the properties of a REIT. So a high WALE means on average, longer leases have been secured for the REIT. After we've collected all of these data, we measured if the COVID-19 impact scores correlated to any of these key performance indicators. And with that, we proudly present to you REITmo, a website that we've created to make our project more relevant and accessible. Just a side note here that our website is best previewed on a desktop or laptop because of the presentation of graphs. In any case, our website simplifies complex financial analysis with our user-friendly functions, explanatory infographics, and interactive dashboards. To provide you with a rough idea of how our website works, here is a demo video.
Hi there, welcome to REITmo. This video will guide you through the site to help you glean insights on the industrial S-REITs market from the COVID-19 fallout. Before I begin, let me give you a brief introduction of what this website is about. The idea of the website came because of the confusion in the financial market caused by the pandemic, especially with industrial REITs. Some say industrial REITs are a good buy, because of data centers that are booming. But some say industrial REITs are not a good buy because manufacturing and production has stalled. As future real estate professionals, we hope to demystify the confusion with research on how the pandemic has affected the various industrial REITs. I wanted to see whether industrial REITs were really doing well, and if they were, what are the factors that are linked with it. Our website has various tabs. Overview provides you background information of the REITs you investigated and the pandemic's impact on the REIT. Methodology explains to you the scope of the study and how it was done. Quantitative data shows you the data we collected from the REITs from 2019 Q1 to 2020 Q2. Insights from our analysis is where we share with you the conclusion we drew from our study and the data. Finally, we have forum where dynamic discussions about industrial REITs can be done there.
Wow, that's a lot of information to process. My foremost interest is that I've heard Ascendas REIT is a good buy, and I want to know if it's true. I'm hoping REITmo can help me. Do you think you can give me a demo on how their website works?
Sure thing.
Perhaps we can focus on Ascendas REIT's property first. Where are they located?
Well, for that, you can look at Overview, and in the first graph, you can get the information. You can click specifically on Ascendas REIT to see where their properties are located and their asset value. So from here, you can see Ascendas REIT is located in USA, Australia, UK, and Singapore, with an asset value of $12.76 billion. If let's say you want to buy REITs only from a certain country, vice versa, you can click on the country to see which REIT has properties in there.
Oh, Ascendas REIT has property in US, and I know US has been badly hit by COVID-19. Can I find out how does this impact them?
Of course, the bar graphs at the top shows you Ascendas REIT's pandemic impact. So if you can see, we have already clicked Ascendas REIT. Ascendas has a score of 1.98 over 3. While its COVID impact score is not the highest, but 1.98 does seem quite worrying. You can also find out the pandemic's impact on US as well, right? You scroll down a little further, you can also see the pandemic impact from a spider diagram as well. So if you scroll down a little bit, from this diagram, you can see that Ascendas REIT COVID impact score is mainly due to high impact on international travel and social distancing policies.
I see. What does this mean for my investment? How has Ascendas performed during this pandemic?
Well, the last graph below shows you the volatility of the various key performance indicators we have selected for the REIT. Well, since we're interested in Ascendas, well, let's just click on Ascendas. Okay, so it's loading a little bit, then we click on Ascendas. So Ascendas is the red line, and it seems like the percentage change from average 2019 results to Q1 2020 results is quite stable for Ascendas as compared to the other REITs. So the drop-down filter at the top, let us see if this stability is reflected as well in the percentage change from average 2019 results to Q2 2020 results. In this time period, we see the performance is more volatile. Understandably so, because Q2 was when the REITs were really affected. However, Ascendas does seem to perform better than the other REITs.
Wow, interesting. As an investor, I'm most concerned about MSP. Can I have more details about how Ascendas MSP performed during this pandemic?
MSP, you mean market share price, right? Well, yes, you can find out by going to the tab Quantitative Data and then look at the sub-tab Market Share Price. In the first graph, it records the general trends of each REIT's market share price. For Ascendas, you see that it's one of the highest MSP among all the REITs. And despite the drop in Q1, Ascendas' market share price seemed to bounce back up quite high in Q2. It's even higher than pre-COVID levels.
That's encouraging. But from the earlier graphs, it seems that Ascendas REIT is quite badly affected by the pandemic with a score of 1.98. Is this an outlier then? Because it performed so well despite its high COVID-19 score?
That's a very good question. You can know the answer by looking at the graphs below. So if you scroll down a little bit further, the bar graph helps you to discern the sub-impacts and the market share price changes. If you scroll down a little bit more further, the scatter plot plots market share price changes with the COVID-19 impact score. As you can see here, the trend line is almost close to flat with a very, very small R square. So it seems like the COVID-19 impact score is not a predictor of how well the Ascendas market share price changes.
Oh, I see.
Well, so there you have it, right? That wasn't so bad, was it? Now you're equipped with the tools to explore our website to better understand the industrial REIT market in Singapore. Happy investing!
Now that we've presented our data analysis, you might be wondering what would help to differentiate between a well-performing REIT from an underperforming one. So we carried out further analysis on 3 indicators, NPI, DPU, and MSP, which can be found on our website under the Insights from our Analysis tab. So zooming in on the diagram, which illustrates the relationship of these 3 factors, NPI affects DPU because if NPI increases, a REIT has more dividends for its investors, which means higher DPUs. And higher DPUs attract more investors, making each share unit more valuable, and therefore MSP increases. Your next question will probably be, why these 3? The answer is because these 3 factors matter the most when it comes to assessing the potential of investments. For our next analysis, the independent factors are PAV, NAV, gearing ratio, and WALE. These factors will be variables in regression to be controlled. Our 3 selected factors will be dependent variables to be estimated or predicted. Due to time constraint, I will only share about 1 factor, which is NPI, and the full PDF slides can be downloaded from our website as well. But for now, here is a condensed version. So the first graph is on PAV. When PAV increases, NPI will increase, reflecting a positive trend. The same positive trend goes for NAV, gearing ratio, and WALE. This table summarizes the trends of all the dependent factors versus the independent factors. And we observed that NAV and WALE have positive trends for all 3 analyses, but PAV and gearing ratio have differing trends. Explaining the trends, firstly, NAV. Higher NAV could be attributed to larger portfolio sizes because by formula, higher asset values equals higher NAV holding all else constant. With larger portfolio sizes comes higher rental income and hence higher NPI. As previously mentioned, DPU and MSP will hence increase in tandem when NPI increases. The same train of events happens for WALE, in that higher WALEs means more stable rental income. The same story goes, higher NPI, DPU, and MSP. NPI and MSP increase in tandem with PAV. But DPU decreases as PAV increases. Why is that? A possibility that we've identified is REITs could be diluting their shares by issuing more shares to raise funding for property acquisition, and that's why distribution per unit falls. Lastly, for gearing ratio, a healthy balance sheet reflects lower gearing ratios because it implies a REIT's high capability in servicing its debts. So the trend for DPU and MSP are in line with market norms. However, NPI shows the opposite, where the higher the gearing ratio, the higher the NPI. We attributed this to increased spending to help the REITs tide through this tough period, or that REITs could be spending more money on acquiring better technology, machinery, and equipment to make their properties more appealing to tenants. When that happens, occupancy rates could increase, hence increasing rental income and NPI. Doing a cross-comparison between the 3 analyses, we identified the common winners and underperformers as shown in the slide. We observed that REITs that were consistent were common winners amongst all 3 analyses. So if you wonder what makes a winner, Chelsey will elaborate.
Okay, thank you, Tiffany. So next, we wanted to find out what sets these well-performing REITs apart from the others. Hence, we felt that it would be good to look into managerial contributions of that firm itself. And so our group also wondered what did the managers actively do to ensure that their performance are good. So we will take Ascendas REITs as our case study for this segment. So to start off, $521 million. This figure here is the gross revenue reported on 30th June this year. So despite the pandemic, their gross revenue still rose by a healthy margin of 14.6%, which led us to categorize them as one of the well-performing REITs. So Ascendas highlights include having the capability to keep all their tenants amidst COVID-19, and this is quite an achievement because as many tenants in other industries, they were not able to carry on with their leases. Ascenda's highlights include having the capability to keep, So here comes the part of active managerial contributions. We figured that one of the reasons attributing to their well performance can be the actions taken up by their managers. So hence we looked into this to get some answers, and being proactive and constantly adapting early was what Ascendas did. They adapted in terms of engaging and digitally marketing the vacant spaces in their portfolios to customers. Okay, so some other pointers as to why Ascendas is performing well can be attributed to making value-adding investments amidst COVID-19. So if you often catch up on REIT news and movements, Ascendas actually acquired a 25% stake in Galaxis, where they are classified as an integrated and urban development. This acquisition fits well with Ascendas' REIT strategy to invest in well-located and high-quality business park properties in Singapore. So this shows that Ascendas thought about forward planning and in unprecedented times like COVID-19. Okay, so looking at the future. So to answer the question of how Ascendas differentiate themselves from other REITs, they do so by having a $561 million reserve and affirming investors that their liquidity position will remain robust amidst COVID-19. And this is because of their carefully chosen diversified portfolio. The reason why a diversified portfolio is beneficial to an investor is because it manages risk and reduces the volatility of an asset's price movement. So similarly to Ascendas' example, they have a high level of natural hedge spread out in countries like Australia, UK, and the US. And this minimizes the effects of adverse exchange rate fluctuations. So we have made a comparison to underperforming REITs and found that their countries of choice may not have been strategically chosen like how Ascendas has. So in conclusion, our team did a research on the impact of COVID-19 on the industrial REIT players in Singapore, and we did a correlation study to see if COVID-19 impact scores and selected key performance indicators are correlated to strong performing industrial REITs. So furthermore, REITmo, our website, was specially designed with investors in mind. So our analysis deepened our understanding and allowed us to draw conclusions beyond what seemed to be superficial factors caused by the pandemic. And our website also has interactive dashboards for investors to conduct their own analysis with the data that we have collected. So from this, we gathered that while our COVID-19 impact scores did not show strong correlation to strong performing REITs, the other 4 factors did, and a qualitative analysis on the key actions taken by the managers of well-performing REITs was also done. So our aim as a team was to provide valuable insights while placing ourselves in the shoes of investors and covering factors that will be of interest to them in making their investment decisions. So with that, we come to the end of our presentation and we'll be open for questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Tiffany and Chelsey. So we'll take questions now. First question, easy one. Is the website actually live and accessible?
Yes, it is. It is. You can try it. You can try the link that we've provided.
Okay.
Yeah,
Maybe
and
we'll show that.
it's live right now, so you can go on now. And as previously mentioned, we suggest that you view it on a desktop or laptop because of the graphs that we're showing.
Okay. Next question. Do you think your results will hold and be applicable to other sectors?
Okay, so previously mentioned that we chose industrial REITs on purpose because we think that because they've been doing well, right, thanks to the boom of e-commerce and even telecommunications. So I think that industrial REITs in particular during this pandemic are the ones that really showed that like how REITs can actually stay constant during such an unprecedented crisis. So I think our professors can agree that commercial sectors and retail sectors are a little bit more unpredictable in the sense that until now a lot of us still cannot predict how they are going to show up, like, you know, in a post-COVID world, like how they will perform in terms of their demand. So I think we really have to try it out. We have to like churn out the data and try and run the same set of analysis using the same 7 key performance indicators and our Tableau analysis as well to really see and to really answer that question properly. Yeah.
Yeah, but the whole exercise shows the audience how to do a rigorous analysis, right? So the principles will still hold, yeah?
That's right.
Do we have any more questions? Well, probably not the audience we were expecting. So we are done with Q&A now. And maybe as people go onto your website, they will have more questions, and we encourage you to send questions in. We have an email address, and then we will answer your questions on our website. The students will, not me.
So just to add a note,
Yeah.
there is a forum page on our website, so you can, the audience can go and try it out. Just let us know your questions there, and we will answer you.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you,
Thank you,
Doctor.
Tiffany. Thank you, Chelsey. And thank you, Joelle. Okay, so for the next group, which is the fourth group of today, it's on valuation. And the title is Future of Valuation, COVID-19 and Beyond. And the group members are Ho Qianrong, Selina Ang Zihan, Tao Ran, Christopher Chiang Wei Xiang. Let me read out the project synopsis. COVID-19 has undisputedly caused a colossal impact on the valuation process of Singapore's real estate. The industry should capitalize on this black swan event to elevate the effects of the pandemic and truly future-proof and transform valuation. This is achieved by adopting novel property technology strategies such as smart contract, smart ledger, machine-led inspections, virtual reality, big data, Internet of Things, automated valuation process with machine learning, image analytics, market indicator elements, interactive valuation reports and processes incorporating sensitivity analysis and risk analysis. For today's presentation, we have Christopher and Qianrong. So over to you guys.
Thank you, Dr. Sky. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Qianrong. With me today is Christopher. Together, we present to you the future of real estate valuation. Before we dive into the presentation, let us watch an introductory video. COVID-19 has been the hottest topic of 2020. Looking back, the pandemic did a fair bit of damage to the global and national economy, with the shutdown of businesses to unemployment and GDP decline. In fact, Singapore's GDP plunged by 13.2% in Q2 2020, making it the worst quarter on record. COVID-19 has placed all sectors in the economy under an unprecedented downward pressure, and the real estate sector is no exception. Singapore went into circuit breaker mode on 7th April 2020, where only essential services were allowed to operate. Professor Yu once taught me that the provision of valuation services facilitates the efficient functioning of real estate markets. So, when I first heard the news, I assumed that valuation services will continue as per normal. However, valuation was deemed as a non-essential service, unfortunately, under the circuit breaker rules, and valuers were unable to conduct physical site inspections of properties, hence disrupting the valuation process. Apart from the disruption to site inspections, other implications to valuations are qualifications by valuers, limited market data, and rental income uncertainties. Cash flows, discount rate, and terminal cap rate are fundamental inputs that all valuers have to consider. However, given the unique challenges created by COVID-19, calls for an adjustment to these inputs. Let us see how these adjustments might look like in the two worst hit real estate sectors, retail and hospitality. Corresponding discount rate in the retail sector is expected to increase due to the low to negative retail growth, decreased probability of renewing existing tenancies, as well as the increased risk of tenant bankruptcies and defaults. Similarly, capitalization and discount rates in the hospitality sector are expected to increase since tourism is as good as dead amidst the pandemic. The outlook for real estate valuation looks really bleak. Before we look into the future, it is useful to reflect upon the how, what, and who of traditional valuation. The valuation process begins from the moment the client requests a valuation. The first step requires the valuer and client to discuss and agree in writing details before the work starts. Next, the valuer will collect data on the subject property through physical inspection, property analysis, and market analysis. Valuers then process the data before selecting an appropriate valuation methodology. The valuation process is concluded with an opinionated value in the valuation report. Property valuation has come a long way, but with the impact of the pandemic felt by the valuation profession, there needs to be a change, and our team is here to provide innovative and novel solutions. What are they? Our team has a great vision. Let us sell you the idea. We adopt 3 key drivers to future-proof the valuation industry, namely fragmentation of the valuation process, PropTech, and proposals to navigate uncertainties. First, what do we mean by fragmentation? The valuation process could be split into smaller fractions, with some fractions handled by other professionals and the bulk through PropTech. What is left then for the valuer is to sense-make the data and coordinate the efforts from various stakeholders in order to derive his valuation. Second, we propose a multitude of PropTech imbued within the valuation process to enhance efficiency and to mitigate the challenges highlighted previously. Third, in order to navigate uncertainties in valuation, we propose the use of sensitivity analysis and risk evaluation in the valuation practice. This is an overview of the PropTech that our team is proposing to future-proof valuation. They include smart contract, smart ledger, machine-led inspection, big data, IoT, image analytics, AVM with machine learning, and a novel interactive valuation report that our team has come up with. In the next few minutes, we will briefly introduce what the technology is all about and how it can value add towards valuation. If you're keen and like more information, please request for a detailed report from Ms. Candy, our department administrator. How does a valuer engage a client during the COVID-19 pandemic, given that they cannot meet in person? Is it through WhatsApp or Zoom? Do you trust these platforms? We propose the use of smart contracts backed by blockchain. It is a digital contract that automatically processes transactions between the client and valuer. It happens remotely, eliminating the need to meet in person. Valuers perform a title search to ensure a clean title. What happens during a pandemic? The lawyer is not in office, and SLA might take time to furnish information on the subject land title. We propose the use of smart ledgers, again backed by blockchain. Smart ledgers are land titles stored within the blockchain network. It is immutable and transparent. A valuer can obtain a key to access a particular land title and examine its liens and encumbrances. Now, SISV has mandated that valuers are disallowed from conducting physical site inspections, and in place, clients would take photographs of their properties and submit to the valuer. Now then, as a valuer, can you trust these images? Can you trust that the client would not have doctored these photos? We propose the use of machine-led inspections, allowing the valuer to be there while not physically being there. Such machines include drones, VR, and inspection robots. In fact, our team has conceptualized a prototype inspection robot of a Xiaomi vacuum cleaner that is programmed to maneuver around the room with an attached camera to render the interior of the property into Matterport. While the idea is elementary, what our team is trying to put across is that these machines and technologies are out there in the market, and we can simply capitalize on them. I hope you're excited by the proposed PropTech thus far. Chris will now continue to build on our PropTech recommendations.
Thank you. Today, data is one of the world's most valuable resources. It plays a central role in real estate and, of course, the valuation process. Big data is data that contains greater variety, arrives in increasing volumes, and at a high velocity. Big data comes in different forms as compared to what we have today. Big data and the Internet of Things have a symbiotic relationship. IoT is a source of big data. One simple example of big data is Instagram, that we all use, even a moment ago. Insta posts could potentially be used as a data source. The posts are well supplemented with geotags and hashtags, allowing valuers to search for images in the vicinity to enhance the appreciation of the surroundings, making better decisions. IoT is the concept of connecting any device with an on and off switch to the internet. The information gathered, which serves as big data, can be analyzed to help valuers with a particular task or learn from a process. Smart buildings are welcomed by developers. This provides a real-time data for productivity, convenience, and sustainability. Safe entry is a good means to track footfall of commercial properties. Contactless payment with minimum physical interactions allow transactions to be more efficient and convenient. It is well complemented with IoT that automates and interconnects everyday tasks. Such combination would enhance the accuracy of firms' cash flow and provide an opportunity for accurate valuation. Image analytics is the ability of computers to recognize attributes within an image. Over 3 billion photos are shared on social media every day. How can we utilize such a big data source? For example, some basic image analysis features are on our phones. For the iOS users, the Photo app. And for the Android users, Google Photos. They recognize every face of our photos. Just by entering reflections at Keppel into the search bar, you could view a collection of the iconic development. Powered by AI, valuers can gather more insight and over these properties over time in a smart way. AVM is not foreign to many valuers. While AVM is looked upon only as a helpful tool, this stance might take a turn as a result of the pandemic. As Chen Rong has highlighted, valuers are desperate for transaction data, forcing valuers to qualify the valuation outcome. AVM will shift from a low-risk valuation with sufficient comparables towards a complex valuation for all property types. AVM will improve in its usability and accuracy. AI is the buzzword in a world of digital transformation. Specifically, we will enable machine learning. Machine learning learns from the limited data without any explicit programming. Machine learning can generalize well to the new data not seen before by the model. Data is split into 3 distinct data sets, namely training, validation, and the test data set. The predictive model is established after undergoing training from a set of known examples. The model then occasionally sees the data, but never learns from it. Lastly, the model is being tested. Very much complicated, but simply, we attend a lecture, absorb as much knowledge as we could, attend our tutorials to apply what we have learned, and cross-reference with tutorial answers, and lastly, go for our finals examinations. The economy is also a key determinant of the property's value. We introduced a novel market condition scale as an element of consideration for AVMs to enhance its robustness. The scale attempts to quantify market conditions, considering more than just GDP. It includes other key economic performances such as unemployment rate, Human Development Index, among many others. Hard copy documents that are lengthy and reader unfriendly will be gone. An interactive report is a game changer. It enhances the readability, communicates and interacts with its users that goes beyond value. This helps users to make even better decisions. There's no reason why a client will need to follow up with the valuer. Practice standards cannot guarantee certainty, but they can reduce uncertainty by making appraisals more transparent. Instead of a single figure, a valuation with a range of values and advice might just be the way forward. To do this, we will perform sensitivity analysis and risk evaluation. To be accepted by the profession, it must be simple, straightforward, avoid complex mathematical processes, and be easily applied. Guided by these principles, 3 techniques of sensitivity analysis are recommended. Macro sensitivity analysis investigates the changes to individual variables and its effect on value. Micro sensitivity analysis investigates the effect of elements as opposed to variables on value. Lastly, longitudinal analysis investigates the effect on time on the property value. Presented in a tornado diagram, the most significant factor is made obvious. Valuers have expressed a value, but things may not go as according to plan. They are not immune to risk. Inspired by ISO 31000, risk assessment comes in 3 phases: identify, analyze, and evaluate. A wide net is cast to understand the property risk profile. We then go in depth to understand the nature and characteristics that's inside this net. Finally, we advise clients to act on the treatment, accept, mitigate, or transfer, and then its most appropriate strategies. Valuers must ask, what can happen, where can it happen, how can it happen, and when can it happen? Risk is then analyzed by assessing the current controls in place before quantifying them by means of likelihood and impact. Lastly, we compare it against a risk criteria, assess our options, and then decide on a prioritized response. Our suggestions do come with limitations: financial costs, privacy, data security, and more importantly, the adoption and enforceability of our proposal. Even so, 4 key thrusts are identified to overcome them. We must continuously educate the profession on PropTech, research further to change the status quo, and the government can facilitate the use of PropTech through endorsements and inputs. Lastly, public and private stakeholders can continuously evaluate the impacts of PropTech implementation as well as revise its policies, regulations, and strategies. COVID-19 has undisputedly caused a colossal impact on the valuation process. This industry should capitalize on the Black Swan event to truly future-proof and transform by adopting the proposed PropTech strategies and improve processes. Digitalization is a trend that's happening. Do you want to be the last in embracing it? Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher and Xiong. So, the questions for you. First one, what kind of time frame do you think the valuation profession will need to adopt what you have recommended?
The quick answer to how fast this can be implemented could just be immediately after this seminar. Why do we say so? I think from one of the videos that we've seen, we utilize a Xiaomi robot, just implementing a webcam on it. With whatever technology that's available, what we are trying to suggest is that we are trying to piece-make everything in just like a jigsaw puzzle. We're trying to take different bits of specialization of somebody who has invented, putting it into perspective, and we can implement it. So really, immediately after this, we could actually use it. Data collection is available everywhere. The shopping centers, for example, they have data even as we speak. It's just a matter of they allow us to utilize this data for whatever research that we do. So to answer the quick answer to your question, or the question that's being posted, is that it can commence immediately tomorrow. But again, it is a structure. This structure, like what we have highlighted in our limitations, is that it requires multiple stakeholders to come in together, not just only the implementers or not just only those that suggest. We need stakeholders like industrial leaders, for example, the government authorities, to set the precedents. And only when they are being accepted or perhaps the statutory authorities has approved it, I think it gives confidence to the public that such valuation technology, PropTech for example, that we utilize, is by way justified, and valuers can confidently say that, I will use this method for my subsequent valuation. Yep.
Right, the next question is, do you think the government will support your recommendations, especially with the use of blockchain?
Yeah, so I'll take this question. Will the government support blockchain? I would say yes and no. So first, yes, certainly the government has a lot of schemes available out there, like the Go Digital scheme, to help companies or even SMEs to put their technology into fruition. So that's one aspect that I think the government is supporting technology, PropTech in specific. However, case in point, on your question on blockchain, I might be wrong, but I think the current stand by the government is that they are still, I would say, not entirely receptive of blockchain because of the public notion that blockchain might be not as secured or immutable as it claims. So on that note, I think the government is still, revisiting its policies as well as its judgment on blockchain.
Okay.
I think to add on to that, what we are suggesting is not an immediate change or acceptance by the public even after we speak. I think it goes, we take baby steps to achieving what we envision of the future of valuation. So really, if you believe in the future of valuation, adopting a change don't just take place overnight. It is a framework that we have came up with. It's a long process, and it takes multiple stakeholders to commit to this process.
I think what the pandemic has done, and everybody can more or less agree, is that we are less resistant to new ideas, right? We're more open now to innovations that can improve our lives. I think that's what the pandemic has a positive impact out of it. So I have a question here. How cost effective is your solution compared with the prevailing valuation fee structure? Cost effectiveness.
To implement all the suggestions and implementations that we propose, it is definitely going to cost a lot more than just a traditional valuation report. However, having said that, it is our team's conviction that a simplistic cost-benefit analysis, the benefits of our proposed suggestions will eventually outweigh the cost of subscribing to them.
Okay.
Yeah, so actually what we see in the future is that some of these things that we suggested, for example, includes the use of machine learning. I think the cost as a starter is going to be skyrocketing, but over time it would scale down for very obvious reasons. Let's just take, for example, the academia. That's doing a great job, an excellent job in trying to change or transform the landscape of real estate for that matter. So for example, I could safely say that in the Department of Real Estate, we are incorporating things like machine learning into our syllabus, and that actually allow us to have more skills, for example, to be well equipped with these skills, so that when we go out into the industry, we are well equipped with whatever knowledge we have learned in the classrooms, apply it to these domains. For example, if one is interested in valuation, apply the knowledge on machine learning into the valuation practice. And with that, in the long run, perhaps in 5 years to come, cost is not an issue because everybody is well equipped with it.
All right.
Maybe I could add just one last thing. So I'm a strong believer and proponent of PropTech. Just 2 weeks ago, I woke up to this piece of news from Bloomberg Business. It reads the title, This executive is worth $20 billion. His company's profit, $0. That was the title. And then it further reads, Zuo Hui founded his company, KE Holdings, with a mission to bring transparency to China's murky property market, where buyers must navigate fake listings and sometimes fraud. The firm uses AI algorithms to match buyers and sellers. So just take some time to dissect and digest what I've just read. The business idea and the business model is basically, simplistically, using AI to match buyers and sellers in a market, specifically in China, where there are many frauds. So in this case in point, this CEO has employed the use of prop tech AI to enhance the real estate market. Yeah.
All right, on the subject of fraud, this is a related question. How do you propose to ensure the protection of privacy as well as data protection in relation to the involvement of IoT and robotics to valuation?
So the question of internet security is at the back of many people over time. We are no experts in this domain of IT, but for sure we are confident that our partners in the School of Computing, for example, are doing an excellent job in trying to strengthen firewalls, for example, and many other processes to protect our data. And I think even at the government or the statutory level, many acts are also in place to safeguard the public in any of such information leak. I think we have many case studies that we have seen over time, for example, like the SingHealth data leak. I think they are a wake-up call, and with that, there's a call to action now to strengthen all these processes. But again, humbly, I really don't have a quick answer to that because I'm not an expert in this domain, but I'm confident that our partners in the subject expert field will be able to strengthen all these safeguards or controls to help this framework or proposal that we have to be more feasible. But it is definitely a concern, even as we speak.
Okay. Another question here is with regard to fragmentation. Does fragmentation in what you have presented mean that valuers would share less liability, in the valuation outcome?
Certainly not. If anything, they would still be the, I would say the overall in charge, overwatching the entire process of valuation. So I wish I could have a piece of paper right now. So if I have a piece of paper, I tear this entire piece of paper, which represents a valuation process, into say 10 smaller fractions. 3 of these smaller pieces will be handled by other professionals dealing with other job scopes. The bulk of it, like what I've mentioned earlier, say 7 pieces would be handled by property technology, PropTech. And finally, these 2 pieces of paper will be dealt with by the valuer himself, who is the overall in charge of this entire valuation process to sense-make all the data and give the final opinionated value of valuation. So the answer is yes, the valuer still has his role in valuation. In fact, he still commands the biggest role in our valuation.
Okay. Last question. How would your proposal increase the quality of valuation?
I'll take that question. Thank you for the question. I think the roles of valuers have changed over time. It is no longer just giving a value of the subject property at the end of the day. I think valuers are equipped with the essential knowledge to actually provide more opinion. For example, how to increase the value, or for that matter, how do we contain or maintain its value over time. So these are precious opinion that the valuers can sense-make out of the data that's available and then present it to our clients. And then with that, the clients can take all these inputs and for that matter, increase its value. And I think it's something that's important for our clients as well. I think in this matter, for any companies that's holding on to any PP&E, property, plant, and equipment, they would definitely not want to depreciate it so quick over time because it's going to affect its balance sheet. So these are some things or things that they can do to make sure that this depreciation does not deplete too quickly over time and help to preserve the company's financial status, for example. So long story short, to keep it in the gist is that valuers' roles have changed. It is no longer about giving a value, but more so as a consultant to the firm, giving more inputs, suggestions, how to future-proof their properties, for example. And this is done through with our proposal of having our risk evaluation and also sensitivity analysis.
Okay. Thank you so much, Christopher.
Thank you.
And Xiong.
Thank you so
very
much.
So again, if you have questions, we encourage you to continue posting or send them to our email address, and we will make sure the students will get back to you. So we have our final group with an interesting topic, and the title is Pandemic Resilient Towns. The group members are Aaron Lim, Matthew Gan, Taipei Xian. So let me read out the project synopsis. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused unprecedented upheavals globally. In a world of interconnected cities where economic activity thrives on the benefits of agglomeration, the pandemic, charged with its contagious nature, has upended the way we work, live, and play into a new normal. The built environment is not spared, having proven to be a contributor to the rapid transmission of disease, prompting a rethink of our priorities when building our cities. We seek to propose a recalibrated planning paradigm with Tengah New Town as a model to start the important conversation on how future town planning needs to adapt. So for this group project, we have Aaron and Matthew as your presenters. Over to you guys.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Sky. So good afternoon to all in the webinar. It is really our privilege here to be able to have a conversation really today with the industry, about all who are attending, about how exactly we can build a more resilient Singapore. So as we know, the interconnectedness of cities have really accelerated the spread of COVID-19, as Dr. Sky has summarized. So through these couple of weeks, we really dive deep into how our built environment really needs to adapt. And one thing is really clear, and that is that density itself is not the culprit, but rather poorly managed density that really exacerbates the spread of contagious viruses. So we're really here with the aim of looking at how town planning, as well as real estate development, needs to adapt in a way that fortifies the resilience of our built environment. And also, very importantly, keeping in mind that pandemic resilience will be a key feature in our environment even after the dust settles from the pandemic. Where do we go from here? So as a starting point for our discussion, the team studied existing plans for Tengah New Town, including the new vision that was ironed out recently by HDB's Designing for Life roadmap, to look at how some features of this new town can be adapted for a more resilient future. Personally, the team feels that the existing plans look extremely promising and futuristic and should elevate the status of public housing in Singapore upon fruition. However, much of the plans have been laid out pre-COVID, providing this unique opportunity to build on the impressive work that has already been done. So as we take a quick snapshot of Tengah today, it is a vast 700 hectares plot of land with abundant natural greenery. So Tengah is very unique because Singapore, we now find ourselves at a crossroad between conservation and development. While there is a need to cater for growing demands of a city, many Singaporeans have also become more vocal about conserving the little greenery we have left. So Tengah is also a very apt example suited for this exercise because its size is relatively representative of the median town size in Singapore. In pondering the vision for towns in Singapore, using Tengah as a baseline, we have formulated some guiding frameworks to really communicate our ideas. So as the built environment navigates a pandemic-laden future, we laid out some principles we thought might be useful moving forward. First, technology adoption has to happen at a rapid rate in a way that is sensible and intuitive. There's been a lot of conversation surrounding building low-touch environment through the use of motion sensing technology, even voice-activated technologies. And I think just this morning I read that SIA has piloted a self-disinfecting coat on all their aircraft. So we believe this is a step in the right direction and has to be a key pandemic resilient principle. Secondly, a lot more thought and deliberation has to go into how we control and manage our air quality. Given our experiences with haze, coupled with the usual airborne nature of many infectious viruses, relying on hybrid cooling solutions have to be a priority for town planning and building design. Thirdly, we have seen how movement, whether intra-building or intra-district, has been affected because of the pandemic. Going beyond the inconvenience of being limited to single access points, sights of people hugging walls as they commute through crowded corridors directly reflect a problem of how we think about movement in our built environment and needs to be addressed. Last and very importantly, all the considerations that we are proposing and making for a pandemic resilient Singapore must center on its people. The built environment has a large role to play in supporting the well-being of its inhabitants. And I think everyone attending the webinar can attest to the kind of stress and pressure we have experienced during the circuit breaker while we were confined to our homes. So scoping down to the ethos that we have envisioned for Tengah, we strongly believe that the town must be anchored by features of sustainability, livability, and adaptability as represented by the rods of the tree you see in the logo. The gold ring around the tree symbolizes potential shocks and stress that Tengah will inevitably face. However, because of its strong foundation, it will not break under this pressure. Lastly, the overall silhouette of the tree serves as a constant reminder of the importance that must be placed on respecting and embracing the ecological robustness and biodiversity of the town. So based on the vision we have outlined, there are 4 key planning paradigms that we have proposed and seek to pursue through this exercise. I will briefly highlight some of the significant and more interesting ideas for the rest of this sharing. So in our first planning paradigm, we really looked at existing town planning models to evaluate whether there was any opportunity for sensible reimagination. We analyzed that monocentric town models were less resilient, apparently because residents had to converge in a hub for urban activities, generating undesirable crowds. Hence, adopting a district center model, each district can then be self-sufficient by sensibly integrating mixed commercial and residential users, potentially dissolving the need for a traditional town center design. So we drafted an illustrative master plan to reflect how planning modalities can adapt to redistribute density in a way that still largely maintains the same critical mass instead of using the conventional hub and spoke model that we have become very used to. So one of the strongest benefits behind a decentralized model is to really reduce travel time on public transport, given that being confined in crowded trains and buses are really fertile ground for viruses to spread in an urban setting. So in order to reduce this reliance on public transport, there has to be a renewed emphasis on walkability in line with LTA's walk, cycle, ride plan, which really comes into the spotlight. So we think of it as a two-pronged approach to address this issue. Bluntly put, I think any of the planners or developers will agree that much less land in Singapore has to be used for private transportations. And by really densifying our districts, we can significantly improve the appeal and viability of walking as a mode of transport. So with this in mind, the team has contemplated various design schemes for these district centers, studying different iterations of neighborhood centers and town centers, everything from the traditional HDB shop houses to the next generation neighborhood centers. And we came up with really a seamless integration of users that can translate our vision of a district-based town into reality. So by combining retail, office, and residential users in a district, we can potentially add office spaces into residential towns, supporting the trend of bringing offices closer to homes, which was really elaborated on the second group's project, talking about bringing workspaces into the neighborhood. So that is something that, from a macro perspective, our plan really supports this trend. And the car-light districts is also a trend that we'll be undertaking. It prioritizes active mobility, where, as you can see, only one side of the district center will have major road access. sort of preventing this conflict that may potentially occur between road users. So by redistributing density away from the town center, Teong will be less likely to become a cluster region in times of future pandemics. Matthew will share more about how our other ideas complement a decentralized Teong.
Thanks, Aaron. Now, our second point will be about making transportation more resilient through non-vehicular transport. We've seen that the threat of airborne diseases makes traveling in packed public transport more daunting. We need to be able to travel longer distances while reducing our reliance on public transport. Walking in Singapore is less of a problem as is driving, but as with many big cities, cycling and micromobility has not been a top priority. So these are some of the more egregious examples from older areas, but it shows the difficulties cyclists and PMD users have. Roads are not as welcoming as cars, go often above 50 kilometers per hour, while on pavements, there are a lot of conflict of users with pedestrians, even when cycling lanes have been added. As you can see on the top left, the cycling lane just ends suddenly. In the middle, users need to go slow and ensure no cars are exiting. And on the right, there's no space to circumvent the bus stop. Cycling down Bencoolen Street on the bottom right also does not look like it'll be smooth sailing either, even though it's so new, right? Cyclists and PMDs go over 20 kilometers per hour and should be having their own infrastructure instead of being forced to use either roads or pavements. Even for turns into residential estate, like in the middle top photo, pedestrians do not have the priority according to LTA, and even when the pavement is visually linked. We think that this arrangement favors car owners far too much and is discouraging for active mobility. We then need to talk about mobility at the master plan level. Circulation space and permeability. We talk about it all the time in the development context, but what about in the town-wide context? We understand that there were good reasons for grouping blocks into estates, but we feel that this has been restricting for mobility where it is most needed, which is at the hyper-local level. Take Punggol, for example. The estates are not interconnected, and walking and cycling needs to take place along the grid, as this is where people can cross. A large amount of land is used for roads to service each block, but are underutilized most of the time because they are only used to access the HDB blocks and are not through roads. Understandably, we are worried about separating people and cars, so curbs and grass or shrub road buffers are built, like in the top left photo. Walking within the estate is more confusing and less direct, so people choose to walk along the road. Even when paths are connected, like in the top right, you either still need to walk up steps or use the long ramp. The photos below show the entrance to Block 272 beside Punggol MRT, and it is a challenge to find out how a bicycle or PMD may enter. When we look at the new renders of the Teong estate, it looks more accessible by walking, with lots of paths on the ground level. However, the paths are made specifically for cyclists or PMD users seem to have been missed out. Not segregating the users slows these users down when there is a need to avoid pedestrians every few seconds. The intended use is also quite different. You would walk from block to block, but when you were cycling, you would probably at least want to travel a kilometer or two. The layout of cycling and micro-mobility network therefore needs to be quite different from walking path network, which if we want it to be more efficient for transport. So, the first thing that we would want, of course, would be cycle lanes. Lack of infrastructure was actually the top reason why Singapore doesn't cycle more, not weather, which might be more intuitive. And when we say cycling infrastructure, there are actually many better options than cycling lanes beside pedestrian pavements. We need seamless travel with segregated lanes, overpasses, underpasses, and priority over cars to make these paths more convenient than driving before it becomes a main mode of transport. Using these active mobility lanes, we can reduce our need for roads, and instead connect the town more through active mobility. These will pass through district centers, incentivizing active mobility and then disincentivizing car usage near the district centers. We'll still have minor roads though, and this will be the second thing we can change. Again, the Dutch model has some answers. The 3 road typologies on the right all allow cars on them, but the roads were also built for cyclists. These are the sort of minor roads that will make active mobility convenient. Japan also does this, and you can often see people cycling in the middle of minor roads. Curbs and road buffers are not used. What keeps pedestrians safe? are the low speed limits, narrow lanes, and non-motorized traffic priority. If we were to implement this in Punggol, we would probably do something like this. We'd have long stretches of residential blocks with the main roads capacity split up into minor roads. The road in the middle can then be prioritized for active mobility. Our last idea for keeping people closer to work goes a little outside of the boundaries for planning, but what we think would help is having rental HDB flats in the business district. The current plan is to offer dormitories for students and Soho apartments for sale, but we think that the HDB may be able to go one step further and support government rental housing in the district. The pandemic has shown us the value of being flexible in our work arrangements, and this includes improving where we need to stay and where we go to work from. These rental units can then be designed and run as co-living spaces as well, so that regulators can test-bed such living arrangements and write the rules for local developers and operators in the future. This test-bedding is needed due to the completely new and more complex operational considerations for co-living, which needs these new regulations for such a disruptive real estate class. By putting the rental units in the midst of a business district, this will appeal mainly only to young professionals who want to move near their workplace. This can be then a self-contained district with a working community, which would be quite different from the regular neighbourhood centres. These flats would therefore not need complete access to as many amenities. This will also help ease the pain of waiting 5 years for B2O flats to complete, which, as we know, is a common complaint nowadays. But more importantly, it reduces the need for a portion of the business district's workers to commute, which is advantageous during a pandemic. We think that implementing community gardens for each floor in new flats also strikes a good balance between private and community ownership. Besides being a recreation activity that anyone can do during a pandemic, residents will also benefit from cultivating their own food and have a reduced reliance on commercial food products, thereby increasing our food security. Furthermore, the pandemic has also forced a shift towards working from home. Work from home can be very frustrating when we are constantly being distracted by loud sounds, construction noises, dealing with uncomfortable working areas, and being cooped up at home, facing the same four walls every day. For the sake of our long-term mental health and productivity, soundproof rooms, better heat insulation, and larger windows will be included in Tengah's residential units. Finally, the new live-work-play model will also include a suite of smart technologies to enable the next generation services. Drones are one such technology that has opened up an entirely new dimension for transport and logistics. A possibility would be to equip each home with landing pads for drone deliveries with automated acknowledgement of receipt and storage. With e-commerce and food delivery trends greatly accelerated by the pandemic, safe contactless airborne deliveries will be in demand and will also reduce our reliance on human-dependent delivery services. That concludes our presentation on how we can improve the pandemic resilience in Tengah Town. We hope that we have been able to translate the pandemic resilience principles into actionable development plans that can be used across New Towns island-wide. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron and Matthew. All right, so keep your questions coming. There is first question for you here. And the person who's asking this question wanted to know if you could summarize, what would the key differences be between your proposal and what is currently developed in Tengah?
Right, so, excuse me, so maybe I can take that. I think looking and really going through at the existing plans that HDB has put up for Tengah, the existing framework and the town planning that is really used in Tengah still, although futuristic, still follows the conventional hub and spoke model, where we have a very focal town center where all urban activities are expected to congregate. That is also where you will find the interchange for the Jurong Region Line, which will be a key connectivity access for residents in the West. So we are really proposing to decentralize this, and we asked ourselves whether there was a need, an absolute need, to have everyone congregate in the focal town center. And we thought that the district center approach by decentralizing some of these commercial centers and commercial users can really bring about a better quality of life for residents, and really shifting the way we look at how we live in residential towns in Singapore.
So what is the residential life quality, the aspect of quality that you're looking at when you propose to decentralize a suburban region?
Yep. So I think one of the key benefits of decentralization is we really want to increase the walkability of some of these towns. So I think the pandemic has shown us that we want to go outside. You know, we want, if there are good quality public outdoor spaces, we are willing to go outside. We're willing to walk, you know, given that they are sheltered and, you know, urban design is done well. So the benefit of this difference will really be, we are reducing the need for people to congregate, you know. People who take the train often will be very familiar with crowds at City Hall MRT station, maybe Jurong East MRT stations. And we thought that, you know, with the pandemic in sight, having such large crowds congregating at MRT stations and transport nodes really become fertile ground that really breed, you know, the transmission of some of these viruses. So we thought that, you know, if we can decentralize away from a town center and in conjunction with really bringing offices closer to homes, similar to what Richard's group shared about Spacelink, right? We think that's a fantastic idea. You know, how we can bring more offices into the neighborhoods. And a lot of us are working from home, but I think a lot of us also want the flexibility to work near home. You know, we might live in Jurong, we work in Clementi, we might just want to work maybe 5 minutes from our place. I can think of so many reasons why people don't want to work from home sometimes. You know, your neighbor, all it takes is your neighbor to have construction, some minor renovations, and you know, if you have lectures planned, you have meetings planned, and it's really extremely disruptive. So I think moving forward, there will really be this demand, at least for some of the younger people, to have the option to work not just from home, but also near home. And I think a decentralized model really provides space, you know, for such activities to take place.
I think just to add on to that point, right, the quality of life aspect is actually quite dependent on our public transport model actually, because when we were in the 2011 elections, I think a lot of what people were complaining about when people were saying that, oh, there's too much crowding in Singapore, is actually a lot of it has to do with the public transport system. And for us, we rely a lot on public transport actually. Even if we are going to the market, usually we'll take like 2-3 bus stops just to get to the nearby market, when actually maybe if you were more active, you could have walked or cycled. But we found that the current model doesn't really plan for that. We expect people to take buses or trains to get to just the even nearby commercial centers. So what we would want to do for this new town actually would be to improve the mobility intra-town. Maybe not so much inter-town, because it's hard to connect towns that have already been built and the infrastructure is pretty set in stone. But within Tengah New Town, in and of itself, at least if we put more active mobility lanes, give cyclists, PMD users, pedestrians more priority, this will allow people to more conveniently move around within the town. And since the town is pretty self-sufficient, like we have the business district and a lot of mixed-use commercial centers, dense residential neighborhoods, we feel that this will be much more workable, especially when we increase the density of the district centers and yet distribute it into smaller areas. This will, I think, increase the livability when we are able to roam freely instead of having to depend on vehicular transport to move around.
Okay. Well, good answers. The next question I have for you is, in your presentation, you look to temperate countries like Japan and Netherlands. So the question is, did the group consider differences in climate, and if that really would affect how your proposal?
Yeah, maybe I'll talk a bit more about that. We did mention this just now, but according to surveys by experts, the thing that prevents us from doing more like cycling is actually the lack of infrastructure. So maybe you won't notice it. Every day we complain about how Singapore is so hot and we don't want to move anywhere. But when we think about it in terms of a commute, when you are going to work in the morning, coming back from work, actually the temperatures is not so bad. At 8 a.m. it's not, say, very sunny yet. you wouldn't get suntan by cycling then. And at night it's also not say a big problem. Of course you get sweaty, and this will need more commitment from office spaces when we want people to cycle to work to shower. But I don't think it is. People do get sweaty when we walk to the MRT stations anyway. So.
Okay. Yeah, good point. I don't think I want to appear sweaty in my office.
Yeah,
but
I think
it's a good point.
Just to build on that, I think the issue of climate and how hot and humid Singapore is has always been one of the focus of conversations surrounding cycling and walking and things like that. And I think that is why it's important to create quality spaces where they are properly sheltered, through the use of plants, shrubs, trees, even physical shelters. And more importantly, I think also it requires some kind of mindset shift, because the reality is that the weather is sort of our demography, right? It's our destiny. We don't get to choose, a different weather, or we are not lucky like Bangkok, which gets a nice 18 degrees every December, due to some climate irregularity. So, understanding that the weather is just fixed, we have to actively want to seek a more active lifestyle. We have to actively want to make some lifestyle changes, and I think a lot of Singaporeans, especially amongst the younger generations, we are very prepared, to make some of these changes.
Mm-hmm. How much of your model has considered mental health strains from the pandemic? That's the next question.
Yeah, so I think mental health is an issue that we really focused on as we were conducting research for this topic. And one of the key pandemic resilient principles that we have ironed out is also about the people's centricity of how our built environment needs to cater for the welfare of people. Being confined in homes, some of us have small families, some of us have big families. And I think from a built environment standpoint, what we can do is really to democratize the provision of space. Through the circuit breaker, we have seen how a lot of these open nature spots are extremely popular. Bukit Timah Nature Reserve, Coney Island, MacRitchie, to the extent where, restrictions have to be imposed to sort of control the amount of people going to these places. So it is evident that we have an inclination, or we do love, some of these nature public spaces. So given that, most of us are confined within, 70 square meters of space for most, 70, 80 square meters of space for most Singaporeans, we really need to be able to have more quality public spaces for Singaporeans to go out that really serves as an extension of their homes, be it within a district, across the island, and that really can indirectly sort of support, the mental health of a lot of us, given that, we are a high-stress city. Recently, I think, just yesterday, it came out that we are just the top, most worked-out country in the world. So I think the built environment really, and as undergraduates going to the workforce, I think we are also quite, anxious about, how much we're gonna have to work eventually, right?
Okay. This other question, let me see if I can read it. Oops. Okay. Current neighborhood centers allow residents essential services. With further breakdown or decentralization, will there be demand for retail and commercial? I guess in the context of your proposal, where if it's decentralizing, say like you say a hub, what would the impact be for retail and commercial, which tends to congregate in the hub, right? In the transport hub.
Yeah, so when we were looking at how the retail was centered, we have one major retail center in the original master plan for Teong for a 7-kilometer square space. So we thought that, and in Teong it is planned for 3, 4, if you count the MRT station at the edge, 3, 4 MRT stations. We found that it was kind of a waste to have only like one MRT station with a commercial center, and other 3 would be just residential MRT stations. We felt that because these are so accessible due to the MRT stations, it would be more worthwhile to actually develop these stations as commercial centers in and of themselves to make use of their connectivity. So anyone who needs to access these areas can do so easily, but these also can be spread out and be not, not as packed as a large center would be. And as for retail space, we think that there will still be an appropriate amount of demand because we are not reducing the total amount, we are just spreading it out. So maybe the value of the retail space will drop compared to the original master plan, but when we add on maybe like office space onto these commercial centers, we think that actually, and when we make these centers more dense, I don't think that the difference will be too much in the long run.
Okay. Right, I think that's all we have for you. Very interesting proposal, and I learned a lot from you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sky.
Thanks, Dr. Sky.
Thank you. All right, so thank you for your questions. And you can keep your questions coming. We will still take them through our email. May I now invite the module coordinator, Associate Professor Yu Shiming, to deliver his closing remarks. Professor Yu, please.
Thank you, Sky, and thank you, all the students. First, I hope all those who are listening to all these presentations, that you will agree with me that the future of our real estate industry is in good hands. We have 5 presentations showcase the talent, the innovative ideas that they have, and the way they confidently present their views. I think this is a good sign that we are, that the students are doing the right things. Now, and then you can see that the 5 topics actually is really a wide spectrum of all the things that we do in real estate. So we actually covered finance, we covered valuation, we covered urban planning, township, we covered community spaces, we covered construction of migrant dormitories, and so on. So, and obviously this is not just all, and there are only 5 of 18 groups. The other groups, look into topics that includes nightlife, that includes legal issues, town planning, retail, the future of retail, and so on and so forth. So really, it only leaves me now to conclude by saying that I want to thank a lot of people. So really this project about the impact of COVID-19 on real estate is what I would say a whole of department effort. We started in June. We organized NYL's series. We had 11 lectures, and they're all delivered by our alumni across the spectrum of real estate industry. And we have the students to attend to learn, and now they have done their homework, done their research, and they present their findings. There are altogether 52 students who took part, so I want to thank each and every one of them who actually worked hard, contributed to the success of this module. Of course, they are also assigned supervisors. The 10 of us, there are 9 other colleagues that work with me, supervising all these 18 groups. We have Prof. Ong Xiao Eng, Joseph Wee, Fu Yu Ming. We even have our part-timers, Zheng, Helen, Joan Ko, Alice Christopherson, Grace Wong, Kweok, a lot more people. And of course, even the head himself, Prof. Sing Tian Fu, who actually supervised 2 groups. Now, I think you can see from the presentation that the group projects were really well thought out. I also want to thank 3 honorable judges. Okay, they are our adjunct professors, Po Hong, Tan Po Hong, Takeup, and Stephen Chu. Because they didn't supervise any group, so they were the fairest in the sense that they picked up the 5 sort of best groups for this public seminar. And of course, I want to thank all the admin support, Kay, Kamaria, who helped me coordinate the module, and of course, Jeannie, Candy, and all the other admin staff who have actually given and contributed to the success of this module. Last but not least, I want to thank all of you who support us through your attendance. I think before COVID, we've been running a lot of public seminars and all kinds of talks and so on. But of course, this year we have to switch the platform, and I think we still get a lot of people tuning in to support. Okay. Now, it only leaves me one last thing to do as the coordinator for this module, and that is to actually announce the results of the top 5 groups. Professor Singh has cannot be around, but he sponsored these prizes, and he has asked me to present to the 5 groups who are here. So the 3 third placings, okay? So can we have Barnabas and Guoxin to come? And Sam, please. Yep. Yeah. Okay. I just hand over to you, because we keep social distance. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Just stand there. It's all given to Guoxin. Look at the camera, I think. Yeah. Okay. Come forward. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. The next group, we will have Richard and Zheng. Mask on, mask off, mask on, mask on. Oh, yeah. It's okay lah. Okay, Zheng, congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, no, that's it. That's it. Yeah. Share. Hey, take a photo. Yeah, take a photo. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. Keep distance. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Joel, Chelsey, and Tiffany. Well done. I think your website, a lot of people are interested in your website. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. And second place goes to Christopher, Chen Rong, Selena, and Tauran. Chen, well done. Good job. Yeah. Ken? Good? Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you. And last but not least, for the very detailed proposal and recommendation that will have a big impact in terms of the design of our new towns. Aaron and Matthew, and Patient is not here, right? Yeah, but her share is here. Please make sure that she also gets a group. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Well done. Thank you. Okay, we have come to the end of our public seminar. So once again, thank you all very much. I know there are many of you who actually have got questions that we have not time to answer all of them. As Dr. Sky has mentioned, we will try to get the students to come up with the answers and then put it up on our website. And I hope you also agree with me that Dr. Sky did a marvelous job in moderating this entire public seminar. Quite tiring, but absolutely great job. Thank you, Dr. Sky. And thank you all of you. I hope we'll see you at the next public seminar that we organize. Thank you very much.